Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Satgurum Pranatosmyaham. We have entered verse 67, which is speaking about this reality. And if this reality is all that is, then by definition, you cannot be excluded from this reality. And there's a common tendency to speak of this reality and then say, wow, that's the reality, that's really nice, but what about myself? Wow, we must be speaking about you too. It's like the 10th man. It's a common thing to illustrate this idea, where men go across the river and they are all there, counting each other, and they want to take care of each other. That's how we are. We want to take care of people. We want to take care of the world. And then we spend all this time, discussing others and speaking about the 9 others and, what are you doing? Where are you? Have you found the truth? And, you need to contact this reality and you need to go to the course and you need to figure this out. And so we tend to just sort of project our ideas because it makes us comfortable. But there's this person, you're just another person from somebody else's standpoint. So they're saying the same thing. They're also saying that to you. You need to go out there and you need to find the truth. And have you figured that out? So everyone's doing that. And we tend to forget ourselves. So the 10th man just wants to demonstrate that the entire focus is really yourself. Because if you include yourself, you've been including others all your life. We're all good at that. We're good at including the world and thinking about things out there. We're good at that, naturally. That's what the 10th man's story shows. Just naturally talk about others and so on. But what about me? And anywhere you go, this is a common thing. You want to kind of put a shield around yourself because it's protective. It's a self-defense mechanism. And then I'm going to sit down and I'm going to listen how he or she is speaking about that. And so then we go to forums online and we advise others, in these non-dual forums, and, we get this joy, how I am taking the role of the leader of being the advisor. And everyone else is doing that, of course. But the very person who's doing that, they are, using this sometimes to, as a self-defense mechanism. And it becomes another coping mechanism, this whole non-duality. It's not supposed to be a coping mechanism. Coping mechanisms, there's lovely, techniques like CBT, DBT, ACT, psychological methods. This is all there. Yoga. This is for psychological refinement and mind attunement and response handling. But when it comes to Advaita, one needs to have at least a little bit of that maturity and say, yeah, I've spoken about the world and my parents and my brothers and my sisters and my aunties and uncles and mothers-in-laws all my life. But hey, there comes a time when I need to take full responsibility for my life. And that responsibility is really the beginning of moksha. Moksha is really just, what's the beginning of moksha? It's really just being absolutely responsible. Taking accountability for one's responses, for one's mind, for one's emotions, for one's choices that they make. And then when they make the wrong choice, one's able to admit it and say, okay, so now let me go back, think about it, and let me do something different next time. So little by little, the mind gets refined and starts to make a new response. You get pleasant feedback this time, and then you grow as a person. If you take yourself, for instance, how were you 5 years ago? The same person as today? I mean, mentally, right? 5 years ago. Yeah, no, exactly. So 5 years, right? Whatever you've done, you've grown as a person so much. And this is a good thing. So this is what it's about. That means you have taken initiative to think, to take that courage, to be vulnerable, to expose yourself. And so Advaita is not meant to hide my own insecurity and pretend I am some existent awareful being who is above everyone now, because we can't do that anymore. We have clearly established that existence awareness doesn't exclude anyone. If I point to a cockroach, that too is existence awareness, as much as this person is, as much as air and space is. And so it doesn't make sense anymore to say I alone am that and everything else is not that. If you stop there at this common subject-object split, that's called Neo-Vedanta. That's where they stop. They say, another term for it is called modern Vedanta or New Age Vedanta. They say, so I am alone, that Brahman, and everything, and they don't really say everything else is not, but they say, all that is here is Brahman, but secretly inside, there is this notion that I am more Brahman than everything else. Right? So there's more like a center, more importance here at the level of the body, at the koshas, but still saying for the sake of appearing smart, all that is here is Brahman. So we have to be very careful not to give more status to the body or your mind than the world, even though realistically you will. Because the truth is, your body is so deeply connected to you, and your mind is so close to you, that you cannot help but to take more care of your body and your mind and your thoughts more so than somebody else's. If this is the case, it's not wrong. This is not it doesn't mean you're not wise. It's just a natural response. So at the same time, there is a certain taking care of the body and living out one's life, but simultaneously there's also a sense of contribution. And we keep saying this contribution is this natural law of Ishvara. A healthy living mind is the one who contributes. The more the mind is isolated from this law, saying I am Brahman, I'm going to keep to myself, the more it says that the mind is still, while entertaining an intellectual notion that there's only one without a second, in actuality, you look at one's behavior, it doesn't represent that full understanding. It's not consistent. So then one has to say, okay, so having gotten this reality, or at least sound understanding, how are my responses? What am I doing? How am I with people? What am I thinking when there's a challenge? And that's your perfect opportunity to work something and bring in the knowledge. So in a sense, if you think about it, hardships are actually a very good opportunity to make a difference. It's very hard, in my experience, to make a difference when everything's going smoothly. Right? It just doesn't allow you to grow. So it's almost like, you can turn this is what the whole prasada buddhi that we talked about earlier, the Ishvara prasada buddhi, recognizing that every challenge and response and everything that happens situationally in life is actually wonderful. Like, it's wonderful that there's friction in life. So it changes your whole reality to what friction means, what conflict means, to what, a little bit of drama means. That is that golden moment, the golden hour or minute to make a difference in your life. That's the moment, not later on when everything's let's together sit down and let's read Think and Grow Rich. Let's read, whatever, Advaita books. So this knowledge has to be there with you when most needed. And one of the ways that I personally make it available to me, you see, for many years, I realized, as we all have, that I was not satisfied with the amount of change that was going on, the speed of change. I recognize there's infinite amount of knowledge nowadays on the internet, so there's no excuse not to make a change. There was so many techniques nowadays. It's abundant, more so than ever in history before. So I thought, so if this is all available to me, and I have this love for knowledge, as most of us do, then why is it that I'm still responding, in the same way as before? And I want to get myself out of this. And then I, like we do for any solution, thought, what different can I do? What something different may I do? And I said, well, what's always with me? It's a phone. Now, a phone, it can be a distraction or it can be a blessing. So I took this app called Notion, and Notion allows you to make these threads on like, for example, feeling angry, feeling disturbed, and then you can click and expand that, little plus, expand that, And then every one point that I learn by and from teachers that really strikes me emotionally, that's really powerful and impactful for you, for instance, I write that down. So next time when I'm disturbed or angry or sad, the mind is sad, of course, and so on, then immediately I'll pull out the phone and expand this feeling, emoted, angry, sad, expand that, and I'll see all of those points that I've been collecting for years now, and that immediately lets the mind think in a new, fresh way, and it works so well. Yeah, so that's just one thread. Then another thread is feeling not confident, feeling shy, and feeling so on. I'll expand that, and then I'll say, hey, everyone is feeling like this end of the day, for example. Go, oh, okay, so you too might be feeling like this. We're all just pretending. We're all playing a game, playing the game of the warrior and the princess. So it's like this. So you really take the initiative to do something about this, right? This inability, or at least that you feel like that change is not happening. And change absolutely can happen if you find your own personal way. So hearing this now, what would you have to do to help yourself to make this pace of change faster? What could you do for yourself? You don't have to tell me, but if you give it a moment, what would you different have to do? Yeah, so this is the important part, because at the end of the day, when we're out of this course, you know, right, life is going to come back, and the same old and new things are going to come. So I want you to have some fallback system, whatever it is, something short, some thought, something new. Maybe the kosha is your new thing. Maybe this Satyam Jnanam is your new thing. What is that new thing that will become a new part of your life when we leave? This needs to happen. I don't want us leaving here with just theoretical knowledge. I promise you, it's not going to stick. So you need to start to ask yourself, it's time to, what specifically, if there's one thing, will I take outside? And if you just take that one thing, you will find that from that one thing you have multiple threads, and they spread into all other, they remind you of everything else. So just one thing, it doesn't have to be 5. So this is the art of making changes, tangible, concrete changes in your life. Yeah, you see, we have people 20 years in Advaita. Yeah, but listening to all the courses, it's same like everyone else. Like, what happened to that knowledge? No, I know all these terms. I don't care that you know these terms. How is your life? How is your daily, day-to-day, moment-to-moment interpretation of reality? Your moment-to-moment perception of what is. That's what really matters. So it's better to take just one teaching and bring it down deeply than to take 100 teachings and feel like this encyclopedia worth of knowledge, and yet it has no efficaciousness in one's life whatsoever. What is that one fallback, one teaching, one mantra, one technique for you that will serve and carry you forward after the course has ended? This needs to be known. Do not dare leave here until you have that. Okay? This is serious stuff. I mean, enough of playing around. Many courses, as one attended, one needs to take this seriously. At least once. And it really does carry forward. So let's just focus on the first two, the waking and the dream. Okay, so causal here, I can also put Anandamaya. That's going to make it more sense. If I put Anandamaya Kosha, it's going to make more sense. Now, this is going to be a little tricky because, see, even in Samadhi, we're talking about Patanjali Yoga Sutra, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, even there, the Anandamaya Kosha is actually available. So, you can even put actually like this. Erase that V, and put it A. So look at this. We have a little issue now. Because you know samadhi, right? It doesn't matter if you haven't experienced samadhi. It's just a very, absorption, state of deep meditation. And all you experience is just fullness of your Anandamaya Kosha. So during samadhi, this Anandamaya Kosha that we only get a glimpse of, Priya, Moda, Pramoda. Priya, Moda, Pramoda, right? When you're with your partner, that's full Anandamaya Kosha, but it's actually not ever full in a waking state. Because remember that verse? It's fully manifest in deep sleep, and it's only partially manifest in the waking and the dream. So you don't ever have that full reflection of Anandamaya during dream or waking. It's only during deep sleep. However, in samadhi, your mind is alert. There's still an alertness there, but there is a fullness of that Anandamaya Kosha. Now, I know someone's going to say, no, the mind's collapsed in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Just take it provisionally. I'm not asleep during Nirvikalpa Samadhi. That's the difference between deep sleep and Samadhi. Both have full access to Anandamaya Kosha. In deep sleep, I don't know that I'm even there. In Nirvikalpa Samadhi, I am there. Okay? So that's the difference. Now, the little problem here is that if you look at the Anandamaya or the causal, it's A. The A means Anvaya, which means it's always present, it's available. And Vyatireka is for that which is variable. That's how I remember. So now you get, wait a minute, we're supposed to establish, because the self is available in the waking, available in the dream, available in sleep, available in samadhi, otherwise you wouldn't go into the samadhi, and therefore self is conclusion is all A, so that's the permanent factor. But then if you look at Anandamaya Kosha, it's also A. So now the problem with this is you might now mistaken, so the self is really in the causal body, in the Anandamaya Kosha. So we need to prove that no, there is only one final A, and none of these others can be A, Anvaya. So the way that you do that is, even though in Samadhi your Anandamaya Kosha is fully available, the thing is it still changes. Because it was a little bit of happiness in the waking and the dream, and now it is a lot of, it's full. And we said the 3 golden rules is anything that changes, anything that is perceived, and anything that is dependent. So samadhi dependent upon its entry, on your mind becoming very, very, very quiet. We call it sattvic in Sanskrit. So it depended upon time to enter it, on it's perceived, of course, that's why I want to enter it, and it changes. So if it's dependent upon that, by definition, it's variable. So we will put a variable there. Yes, on one hand, it's available, but on the other hand, it's also a variable. Therefore, it's AV. Okay, so it's either absolutely available or it's absolutely variable. You can't have both. Therefore, we raise the A because it is still variable. And so what do you end up? The only true one that is Anvaya, that is available in all possible states in existence, is awareness. And so we come to that conclusion that that is the self, that which never goes, never wavers, never leaves, does not depend on time or place, or never changes, and it's that which you are.
On that, is Turiya, is it just another word for samadhi?
Yeah, so Turiya just means fourth. They also call it Turiya. Turiya. So in the context of samadhi, yes, it's the fourth, because 1, 2, sleep, and 4, so naturally fourth. Now, when you use that turiya in reference to consciousness, you can also use that turiya, fourth. Why? Because see how the context changes, and so the entire term changes. So turiya, number one definition is samadhi. Turiya, number two definition is awareness. Now, if turiya means fourth, why do you think it's called fourth? Why is awareness called fourth? Well, we know it's not a state, of course. We have established that because a state has attributes. It has no attributes. Why is it called fourth based on this chart?
The state of mind. What state of mind?
It's not a state of mind. The self is not a state of mind.
It's always available.
In reference to what is it always available?
It's changing.
In reference to?
States.
1, 2, 3. In reference to these three states, waking, dream, and deep sleep, it is the fourth. It is that which is other than the three states, the three major states. If there were 5 states, right? If there were 5 states, suppose you had waking, dream, sleep, samadhi, and bugu wugu, that's number 4.
Sleepwalking.
Huh?
Sleepwalking.
Sleepwalking is not deep sleep. Sleepwalking is still, the mind is very subtly active. Yeah. So suppose you had four states here, then what would you, or 5 states or whatever, then what would you call the self? You will call it the 6th. If you had 4 states, you will call the self the 5th. Okay, so it's not a big deal to call it the 4th.
So these are states of the self. States of what? Waking, dreaming, deep sleep, turiya. The states of what? Of the self.
The state of the self. The state of the self. No, we do not say in Vedanta the word state of the self. We call it a state of experience.
Of experiencing.
A state of experience. So the word experience and self are very two different things.
Then experiencing is the something of the mind.
Yeah, exactly. So experience is always the kosha related.
Yeah.
So any one of these, if you look at, no matter where in this block, except the self, what can you just, one big line here, experience. That's all it is. Waking, dream, deep sleep, samadhi, just one word, experience. That's what defines life. And what is experience generated by? The 5 koshas. Yeah, so, you know, if it's a physical experience, then obviously you got Annamaya kosha. So that now concludes why turiya can be called samadhi, or in a different context, it can be called the 4th for awareness. Because it is that which illumines the 3 states. Therefore, it's the 4th.
You said in samadhi you still are there, but which are you mean?
Yeah, exactly. See, it's a very subtle, the way that I say it, is because why else would you go to samadhi? Why would a person attempt 20 years to go to nirvikalpa samadhi unless there is some benefit to someone? Now, whoever that someone is, the point is, it's still a benefit. It's still, there still has to be, this waker has to be carried over into samadhi for that waker who's going, I want samadhi, I want samadhi, I want samadhi. So that waker is going to be there in the samadhi. So there's a carryover. So that's why in that sense I say there's still someone who benefits that Anandamaya kosha.
It's not the self.
The self is always there, of course. Yeah, but in nirvikalpa samadhi, that bliss, that's the fullness of the Anandamaya. That's not the bliss of self. It's still just, you have full access to the Anandamaya kosha. Or if you want to cheat the whole system, then you just go and have ayahuasca, and that's going to get you there like that. Yeah.
Andre, is that also the difference that before you talked about the difference between Vedanta and Buddhism, and they do not believe in this permanent self? So that's why they think that the causal body is like the ultimate thing, because it's in the moment?
It depends on a scene. Mahavakya, the issue is they still do mention consciousness. Okay, please don't think that Buddhism is some thing there's no idea. You have wonderful teachers and intelligent minds in Buddhism, as intelligent as in Vedanta. Yeah.
But I'm trying to find why meditation and Nirvikalpa Samadhi is so much more focused in Buddhism.
It might be because they won't. I mean, I don't really know actually, so I cannot comment. But I want to say they do still mention consciousness, the self, just not enough of it. Now, their definition of the self, that's why they say there's no self. This is very important. When Buddhism says there's no self, their version of the self is not our version, Advaitic version of the self. Their version is ahamkara. So they're right. There is no ahamkara. The ahamkara's truth is nothing but existence awareness. They're absolutely right.
Reflected consciousness.
Yeah, so let's not put that down. So they're right.
No, I'm not trying.
No, I'm not saying about you. I'm not saying about to all of us, yeah. Because even Vedantins, Advaita Vedantins, they keep on putting Buddhism down. Oh, there's no self, there's no self. You just have to ask, what do they mean by self? Simple, ahamkara. And therefore the whole thing makes sense. Yeah. The only thing that's missing more of is the final reality. That's the only difference. Otherwise, they're brilliant at mithya forms. I haven't mentioned that term. Forms within forms within forms. And they're brilliant at that. Yeah. So let's continue the verse. And it continues to mention, let's not call them attributes of the self, but descriptions of Brahman. Number 2 is free from impurities, vishuddham. Yeah, so nothing sticks onto you. Right, there's no second to relate to, so naturally cannot be tainted, because you only get tainted when you're dealing or interacting with somebody else. If you are interacting with mud, then mud is going to taint you because you're interacting with it. Now, Brahman being the only truth there is, he has no second to relate to. Therefore, he cannot receive some bad impressions from someone or get contaminated in that sense. And we use the analogy of a movie screen, where, clean screen, ginormous, infinite screen, no boundaries. And on that screen is projected a beautiful, movie called The Greatest Story Ever Told. And that story is always being told every minute, every second. So it's not ever told once upon a time. The greatest story ever being told right now. Yeah. And so that movie screen doesn't get touched by the drama or the death and so on. And your body and mind is on that screen. As an analogy. Now imagine that you're this big screen and on you is projected your body. This is imagination. All these metaphors and analogies are just there provisionally to help you connect to the teaching. Then later on you need to drop them. Otherwise the mind ends up holding images of itself as one big ginormous screen, and you are all just on me now, projected. So, right, so we have to be mature about that. And the self is beyond Maya. It's Param. Maya, we have to investigate deeper. I'm not sure if it's going to be today or tomorrow, but it's a very important topic, and you cannot quite resolve the equation that you are that without Maya. And furthermore, see, we often think of Maya as something that's there to hurt you, something there to delude you, but it's not. Maya is forms. In short, that's what Maya is, forms.
Is Maya also part of the self? Or?
Maya is not different from the self. It's also not exactly the self. And this is going to use later on some logics to show you. It's going to get quite detailed. Otherwise, you cannot equate Maya to the self. Let me ask you this question now. If Maya changes, and Maya was exactly as the self, then what would be the logical issue with that?
Self is changing, and it's not. It has not the three conditions that it's not changing, not perceived,
Yeah.
not dependent.
Good. What else would be if Maya is changing and Maya was not different from awareness, what would be the logical issue with that? There would be? There would be not be life. I want more direct, but it's okay, keep
There
going.
would be no forms.
No form, yeah, okay. But at the same time, see now the problem is Maya has forms and how it's same as formless.
There would be no creation.
And no,
Yeah, because it couldn't move, okay? Because
The change is an apparent change. Apparent. It's not a real change.
no, and then my question was that if Maya was exactly the same, Maya is that which changes. If it was exactly the same as that which doesn't change, Brahman, if Maya was equated to Brahman, then what would be the problem with that?
You couldn't perceive changes because if you are changing and the changes are changing, then you couldn't really say.
Perfect logic. So he said that if it was the case, then you couldn't notice changes. So the fact that changes, Maya is noticed, changes are noticed, must show that there is something unchanging, and I cannot be stuck to that which changes. I cannot be stuck to Maya. Maya is not stuck to me. But more on this.
there would be no ignorance.
Yeah, there would also, I can argue, because Maya at the level of the individual, it manifests as ignorance. I'm not sure how to put that into the argument, but the argument that you will not be able to tell changes, that's the biggest argument. That's the most.
Means that you are the change all the time. So that
Yeah, you will be changes, yeah. Yeah, in that case, you just couldn't tell every moment that change is happening. You would be the embodiment of change.
It's like the broken clock would be right twice the day,
Sorry?
The broken clock would be right twice the day.
That's very strange.
Clock.
There would be no freedom. Maya and the self would be the same because Maya changes. So freedom can only be there where it is formless, where there are no attributes.
Yeah, exactly. There will be no freedom because you wouldn't know who you are also. You would be a different being. There will be instability constantly. And you will try to find in you something that's stable, but you can't because you're just constantly changing. Your entire being, who you are, changes. So there will be no sense of self if Maya was changing, if you were as good as Maya. You see, yeah, exactly, it's changing all the time. Yeah. And in that change, there's a stability. And so we all have that stability. Why? Because you're other than Maya. But at the same time, the argument will say Maya is not different from Brahman. Oh, we have a problem now. So we will investigate the logics of that. So it is beyond Maya. And again, I wanted to get back to that thread. Maya is not your enemy nor your friend. Maya is just forms. And what I do with forms, what meaning I give to forms is the kind of a life that you have. Forms can be the greatest enemy or the greatest present. It's up to you. So we use Maya to help us remove the very ignorance that Maya provides. Brahman is happiness that is not bound by time or degree. So we're not talking about happiness of Anandamaya Kosha, are we? Because Anandamaya has Priya, Moda, Pramoda. And it's situational happiness. Depends on the people around us and time and occasion. But here, the verse says, Brahman is unbroken, changeless Ananda. Now this Ananda word, changeless, you can even say changeless joy, changeless happiness, changeless fullness. It doesn't really matter how you interpret it, because there will always be many definitions given to the word Ananda. But again, if it was unbroken happiness in the usual sense, how you look at happiness, as in a big, smiley, experiential happiness, then in that sense, the word Nitya Ananda would be incorrect. So here, this Nitya Ananda, in reference to Brahman, cannot mean experiential bliss. Because yesterday we said all that is here is Brahman. Existence and awareness appearing as different things. Now, if that was the true case, that existence awareness's nature was bliss in a experiential sense, then how come you're not experiencing that bliss now? You're not. You should be experiencing it all the time. Everything should be happy all the time, because it will be intrinsic to all things. There will only be bliss everywhere. So it cannot refer to experiential bliss. Let me say this again. When the word Ananda is used in reference to Brahman, or Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, or Satchit Ananda, it does not mean experiential bliss. Otherwise, the person's basis for this pursuit would be looking, waiting to gain moksha, and suddenly you are in experiential bliss. That's called coping mechanism. So now I'm going to use moksha as a coping mechanism to coping. That means I can't handle my life that's dysfunctional. I don't have a job, things are not working out. It's okay, just gain moksha and I will plant myself, park myself in experiential bliss. That's basically running away from life. So it does not mean that. What it means in reference to Brahman is your ever-existent, ever-present I am, the contentment of existence. You understand that though your upadhi may seem to be limiting you, you're actually not bound by the upadhi. Just like a cup space, though the cup space may experience itself as bound to the boundaries of the cup, it knows through cognitive understanding, though that seems to be like that, in actuality, I am not bound. I am the whole. I am the total. Therefore, it is not a matter of experience, it's a matter of knowledge, matter of knowing it. Just like when I said that sugarcane, the sugarcane says, yesterday I was happy, and today I lost my happiness. And now the sugarcane is going through the world looking for more, sweet, is looking for more sweetness in the world. And it's trying to attain sweetness. And it has a little bit of sweet. Of course it's going to have a little bit of sweetness because that's its nature. But what Vedanta says is we're not about pursuing sweetnesses or non-dual experiences. It's about recognizing that you, as a sugarcane, Mr. or Mrs. Sugarcane, your nature is sweet. It's a matter of knowing it. Now, when I say your nature is sweet, suppose I'm talking to sugarcane, am I lying to you? No, I'm telling you what is already true. But the reason why that sweetness is not experienced is because of obstructing variables called the mind. As we said, when we get born, what you learn from parents, sometimes parents tell you, don't be happy, otherwise bad things will come. And that becomes part of your conditioning. So now, even when you attain this knowledge and you fully get it, happiness is not there. But so what? I mean, it would be nice to have it, but still you understand that there are obstructing variables in the mind that are preventing access to the Anandamaya Kosha. And even then, so what? It's the Kosha. It will be lovely to access it more often, right? More fuller. But there's a certain shock absorber, knowing that despite knowing that I am that sugarcane and my nature is sweetness, I don't have to go out there chasing for sweetness experiences because I am sweetness. And when I make that statement, I'm not lying to myself. It is keeping true with what is. That's why we said the truth is a matter of Vastu Tantra. Vastu, that means it is true in reference to the object of inquiry. The object of inquiry is the self, in this case the sugarcane. What I understand about myself as a sugarcane guy is my nature is sweetness. In other words, my understanding in reference to myself is keeping true to what I really am. So therefore it is Vastu Tantra. My understanding is dependent upon that which is being inquired into. There's no misalignment between what the Buddhi understands and what I am. They're one and the same. When there's a misalignment, it's like saying, this is glass. He said, it's not a glass, it's a metal. No, I want us to be glass. And then the Guru says, this metal doesn't care what you think about it. You have no choice but to align your buddhi to your nature. To your nature, in this case, the metal cup. In the case of the sugarcane, to your nature as sweetness. Now, in our nature, in our case, the nature of existent, awareful being that never moves, that never changes. You have no choice. That's why Vedanta requires a certain maturity of the mind, because the mind is so trained to always say, no, I want it to be my way. I want my likes and dislikes to be fully filled, because that's what gives me joy. So one has to have that ability, discernment, to drop that little me, how I want it to be, and just say, let me just get serious and align my vision to how it really is. Enough of a little child who always wants it his or her way. Otherwise, there's no liberation. It's just going to be an endless pursuit, teacher to teacher to teacher to teacher. And you know what the irony is? When the person is so exhausted of having always chosen their own way over the scriptural way, when they're so exhausted and they say, I've no more energy doing this, they give up. And that very giving up is what helps them finally say, okay, cool, that's how it is. It must be that way because all my methods haven't worked. So after all that pain, the person says, okay, I'll choose to accept this because my stuff hasn't worked. Of course, the idea here is it's not like you've wasted your time because you needed to expand all of those options, into a million possibilities, and then exhaust all those expanded options, and then realize all those options haven't worked. So this is how the journey is. Some of us need to go through 10,000 different things.
So Mr. Sugar Pill gets told from very early onwards that it's bitter. And this gets neurologically and biochemically imprinted, ingrained into the Sugar Pill's mind. And then he gets the knowledge, I'm really sweet, my nature is sweetness. Does the neurological imprint ever change, or does it stay the same until the last breath?
I mean, that example doesn't really do justice to what we're speaking of, because now I have to kind of see, in that case, you can't really go back, because we're talking about like yogurt and curd, right? Once you make yogurt and milk, or yogurt and cheese, once you turn cheese from milk, you can't go back anymore. Yeah, so we're not talking about that place where you're so imprinted and so conditioned that you can't go back anymore. We're speaking of, for instance, something much easier is water, which is slightly salty, right? So now you have to extract the salt from the water, which is possible. Now, I don't know how to separate. Yeah, would someone help me with the expand example?
Well, it's just, does the mind ever get it in the sense that once we got all told we are the body-mind, right? And that's a neurological imprint into the brain. It's like really the brain is conditioned. And it has a physiological and physical
imprint.
reality to it,
Yeah.
And does that ever change by the knowledge that I'm self?
That's the pertinence to the Annamaya Kosha, and it can have strong imprints, and it can, definitely hinder. So I don't think it ever changes, because see, what is a perfect change in reference to neurology? That's the challenge. There will never be a perfect neurological brain that's conducive for self-knowledge. So there will always be a neurological imprint at one degree or the other that will stay there forever. But we're not concerned about that.
So this body-mind carries childhood trauma.
Yeah.
It's deeply ingrained in the body-mind. But knowing it's not me, it's just happening. So the neurons do their things, but the impact is not like it.
Yeah. It can though hinder. It can definitely hinder.
It does.
Yeah.
Can I just add something? Because about they say the plasticity of the brain, the neurons can make more connections. So that when it's changed, something when a therapy works, the neurons make more pathways. They make new connections, and that's available.
Yeah. Yes.
There's self-connections in the brain, that's the question.
Okay.
Can
Okay.
self-knowledge manifest in new neurons?
No, I would say no, because what happens is, as we said, was it yesterday or 2 days before, most of the work, most of the refinement or neuroplasticity work that happens is not self-knowledge. It is the work that you've done before. Yeah, and that work, changes the brain, changes the neurology, changes those old patterns, because you have to rewire a hard-coded neurological network, literally. You have to rewire that, and that takes some time. And so, if it's decently optimal, then the knowledge can take place. Now, when the knowledge does take place, because you have worked on this brain for so long, it's now become a habit. So now that habit is going to continue altering the brain. But in terms of does knowledge alter it? No, because it's a different order of reality. Awareness is not an attribute. It cannot physically change something. It has no hands or something to change any of the components in the physical brain or the mind.
The self reflected in the mind makes the mind think differently. That thinking differently could also change the neurons of the mind, couldn't it?
No, it can't.
I'm just going to say this. The brain is always changing. The mind is always changing. The emotions are always changing. The analysis is always changing. Happiness is always changing. Self has no connection. It is asanga. It is relationshipless. It has no power to change anything. And this, I think, use the word reflection. Doesn't matter. Consciousness has no power to change anything. Now, if your reflection word was ahamkara, then yeah, the ahamkara is always busy doing things. It's always busy changing the mind anyway. Because a reflective consciousness, remember, another word for that is ahamkara. Ahamkara is the false I.
But once the sugarcane got it, that my true nature is sweetness, he can never go back to I am bitter.
Yeah, it can never go back. It's a one-off. And the way that you prove this, okay, so a statement was made, and we don't get away with statements until they are proven directly. So now, how do you prove that your ignorance is gone and that you won't be reborn? How do you prove that? Now, there are several ways, but look at it like this. In Vedanta, we say that ignorance is in the causal body. Okay, so what is this causal body? Think of it as all those things that are yet to come tomorrow, unseen causes, desires, habits, and ignorance. All of that is stored in a causal body. Now, please don't think of this causal body as some place out there, because people often say, where is this causal body? We just give these random names. Vedanta has to give you some names so that you're appeased with the methodology. So the causal, we say ignorance, Now, what kind of ignorance? Ignorance of who I am. So ignorance of my nature. So that's in the causal body. Your karma phala. Karma phala. That means all the causes that are yet to work out. That's in the causal body. Desires is also there. We call it vasanas, samskaras, I would just say impressions. Impressions. So these dictate your personality. Mostly desires and impressions. So all this is here in the causal.
Is it like subconscious?
No, subconscious is number one, it's a Western word. Subconscious is, it's still your conscious mind, but it's that autopilot, right? Like a very habitual autopilot. But those habits that are running in the background, where do they come from? They come from the causal body. So when it comes to causal and subconscious, do not mix these words together because they come from a different model. Subconscious comes from, I think, Freudian psychology, Carl Jung, yeah. And I've investigated into this. I've forgot the details now, but I remember the conclusion was, no, we cannot put it into Vedanta. It's different model. The question is, how do you prove that your knowledge is gone and there will, potentially no rebirth? Well, yeah. How do you know that your knowledge of who you are not, right? Ignorance is gone. So how do you prove that your wrong knowledge, your false impressions, your false ideas, which we call ignorance, how do you know that's gone? Well, for an unwise person, you see, when they wake up, a normal person who's yet to figure this out, what was in sleep? The causal body. That means all those personality traits were in deep sleep. How do you know? Because when you wake up, you continue, you're not like a different person, you continue those personality traits. Now, when the seeker goes to sleep, knowing that the ignorance is in the causal body, what happens when the seeker wakes up? The seeker continues to seek. Why? Because they woke up from that which has ignorance. They woke up from the causal body and they continue to seek. That means they originated, my subtle body as a jiva originated from the causal body. That means it got parked in the causal body and it originated from the causal body. And what is now manifesting that subtle body in my waking state? I don't know. I've got knowledge, which is actually incorrect. Ignorance. I've got ignorance. So what does this mean? If that jiva were to die right now and be reborn, from what is being still carried? Causal body, and causal body had ignorance. How do you show that? Because the seeker was still seeking for the answers, still had doubts, still was looking out there, still was unsettled with one's existence. All that shows that there was ignorance. So if they were to die right now, we can tell there would be a rebirth, and in that rebirth, why would there be a rebirth? In fact, when the person is reborn, they would still carry that ignorance. Because where is this going to go? It has to stay to one individual. You can't just give it to somebody else. It has to stay to that one single jiva that travels. Now, for the wise person, in the waking state, when they solve the problem of their nature, they gain the knowledge which cancels out the ignorance. They gain the right knowledge which cancels out the wrong knowledge. And that, what we call akandakara vritti or brahmakara vritti, we'll talk about this, moksha, right, takes place. In that moment, they have no more desire about seeking further. The desire for seeking further collapses completely. Now the teachers continue speaking about this knowledge, and you're like, yeah, it's wonderful. I've got no problem with it. I'm not anymore, what I used to be, this, wow, this is amazing, and show me and tell me more. You went through that process. Now you're suddenly mature, like, yeah, I relate to this, it's normal. So this means your doubt in reference to this reality has collapsed. If the doubt is not there, it shows you the ignorance is gone. So now when the ignorance goes in the waking state, and that seeker, that desire for seeking goes away, what happened? It canceled out the ignorance. Where is the ignorance? In the causal body. So now that one goes to sleep, like we all do, and their subtle body comes out of the causal body. Are they a seeker? Do they continue seeking the next day? No. Where do they originate from? The causal body. So what does that say? The fact that I woke up as a wise person and I'm no longer a seeker. I woke up from a causal body and I woke up and I'm not a seeker. That means I have not taken ignorance along with me.
So you don't come back?
And therefore, if that one were to die, they don't have ignorance.
But then you will, if you can never become born again with two parents who know already who they are, who have moksha, because they don't come back. So you will not have an environment never where you are be born in, that you can imprint you are this, We get always the wrong imprints from the parents. You are not good enough or whatever. Always traumas. So you need different parents who are in moksha. They don't exist. You know what I mean? Because they don't come back.
Yeah.
So you will always be born with ignorant parents.
Yeah, you always be born. Yeah, good point. You will always be born with ignorant parents.
Not if Andre makes children, somebody who's.
Good one.
Also, maybe it's not anyway the case that your parents can tell you many good things, and it will maybe not if it's not time for you to be.
Let me challenge that. What if two people who know who they are, I mean, this is rare, and they have a desire for a child, because that's still unfinished prarabdha karma. They know who they are, and someone gets born in their family. That's possible.
Lucky guy.
Very lucky.
But this child,
That's super high punyam.
but this child might be carrying her own big thing.
Yeah.
Because she had a very bad karma in her past life.
Yeah.
And
They could be like super ignorant.
so this, yeah,
So they balance each other out.
you never know. You never know.
But doesn't matter for your parents are.
I mean, of course, because you don't choose it. You don't. In a sense, the jiva does choose based on their karma pala.
Yeah, but still it doesn't matter. Because
It doesn't matter in a sense.
It's only matter that they are your teachers, nothing else.
Yeah, it's still because you still have your own trajectory, your own life.
Yeah,
They're all karma.
And the world is not just your parents, it's many things that can scar a child apart from the parents.
Because
Yeah.
all the rest is still cautious. They're related with cautious, not with.
Yeah.
Is there a pramana that after having gotten rid of ignorance and having had the knowledge of the self and waking up, that we will go to moksha, or we have to take the word of the scriptures for it?
So you're asking whether you have to take the word of scriptures. Provisionally, yes, definitely. Later on, as the mind becomes more solid in this knowledge, more keeping with reality, things take a real clarity. There's a real clarity to it. And there's just simply no concern about coming back or not coming back. So now that is something that every individual has to find out for themselves. There's no point describing it. But that's why we have nididhyasanam. The firmer that knowledge comes in, the wise person's reality is very different. Even though it's the same, it's still at the same time very different because their mind is so established in the knowledge that they interpret things differently. But at the same time, it's all the same. So what I mean by that is they're not simply concerned about dying. There's a much easier, more trust in life. You see the connections, you see the order, you see Ishvara. Cognitively, of course. I'm not talking about seeing something literally like in Matrix, right? So things really do, you yourself become the pramana, but you needed the scriptures initially to help you out to get there.
So when you know who you are, you said the causal body does not make you seek again or make me want to run all over the place. But the gross and the subtle body, you still have this old traditions, habits.
Yeah, because the gap between intellectual recognition, cognitive recognition, and emotional imprints, that's a huge, vast thing that everyone has to work on their own. And to be honest and frank here, I don't think that any person will ever resolve all their stuff. It's just not possible. So
That's the nididhyasana, no?
that's nididhyasana, yeah. So, yeah.
And your application that you said before.
Application.
That you have to claim it again.
You have to reclaim it again, and you have to take a stand in what you are, again and again and again. So let's think not that moksha is the solving of all problems. You can have two wise people. One of them is kind of happy, the other one is cheerful. Because you've got different wise people. You've got Krishna, you've got Vidur, you've got Vyasa in the Bhagavad Gita. They've got different personalities. One is very cheerful and outgoing, plays the flute. The Vyasa is, like a rishi. He gets people to come to him. We've got Vidur, he's more into politics. So very different levels of happiness, different levels of occupation, but different personalities altogether. And so let's think not that moksha solves all issues. You still are inundated with life challenges. And those life challenges end up making your mind more mature because now you're interpreting the world in the light of knowledge rather than distortions. And that ironically makes you even more qualified and lets this knowledge settle even deeper.
Earlier that there cannot be a difference in consciousness because there's only one consciousness, so there cannot be different. Is it then correct to say that there could be a difference in ignorance when there is a more mature mind, that there could be a difference?
There is either total knowledge or total ignorance. There is no I know who I am plus 0.0001% of ignorance. Moksha is total clarity. Yeah. So ignorance is always ignorance, knowledge is always knowledge. This is one of those few categories where it's absolute. Knowledge is absolute, ignorance is absolute. So there will never be a time when you are almost there. I'm almost there, like lights are no longer going off and on, off and on. They're off and on, off and on. It's very quick. Yeah, there's no more of that. It's just total, consistent knowledge. Yeah. Until then, it's not moksha.
When you get moksha, then the retreats are finished. When you got moksha,
Yeah.
when you are, retreats are finished for you. You don't go to any retreat anymore.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can chill out. Yeah.
Then it's
Yeah,
your life.
yeah, exactly. So you can still continue to work on your mind.
Yeah.
And why will you most work on their mind? Because they've already worked on their minds. So don't think now, moksha is all going to end. It's just, you got imprints. At the level of the body-mind, there's a person who's working on themselves. That will continue. In fact, the healthy attribute of a human being is to work on oneself.
But you don't work on gaining more knowledge. You work on your emotions, stacked emotions and fears, all these things, but not on the knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. So you work on whatever is necessary for you.
But if you become a teacher after, you work on the knowledge.
Exactly. But you can't help it because even just to teach, you're embedding that deeper and deeper.
Is it like this? Is it like this? You don't work anymore on the knowledge. of the self, because you got it.
Yeah, exactly. So in other words, the knowledge doesn't do anything. So you can teach, this awareness. You're like, I appreciate it, but it has no impact. It's simple as that. Once you know 1 + 1 = 2, then no matter how many times somebody says it, you're like, thank you, I hope it helps somebody else. It did the job for me. It's not pride, it's not ego, it's just how it is. Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.